There's a certain excitement in our hobby whenever we're about to get a new piece of gear. It's the anticipation of those moments where your music opens up for you in a whole new way and allows you to experience your favourite tunes in a way you've never heard them before. I remember when I first bought the original Beyerdynamic T1 headphones. They were my first proper flagship headphone after owning the HD650s from Sennheiser before that. Listening to the T1 headphones on the bottlehead mainline amplifier was one of those revelatory experiences. For the next however many years after that, I continued to chase that buzz. And I caught it from time to time. My first listen to the original HiFi Susvaras, owning the original Mesa Empyreans and the Mesa Elites, upgrading from whatever DAC I had before it to the shit Gunyear Multibit or Gumby, and then upgrading from the Gumby to the Chord Cutest. Time and time again, I did enjoy those magical musical experiences, the benefits of an upgrade bringing you a new take on the music you already know. But here's the thing. That's also the trap of this hobby, and many brands are aware of this trap. They use it to their advantage. It's not malicious or vindictive, it's just a double-edged sword. These brands are doing exactly what we want them to. Our buying habits and the focus of most conversations on audio forums and YouTube comment sections and indeed the YouTube videos themselves are all about chasing that next hit of audio dopamine. We're literally asking for it. So they provide it. And it's wonderful because we get to try new gear. It's dreadful because it feeds our addictions. And the Fosi Audio ZH3 is just another of those temptations for us to resist. It's a trap in the sense that it's not particularly better than any equivalently priced product that you might already own. However, it's also a solution to the trap because the ZH3 can kind of grow with you. It creates opportunities for simple and affordable upgrades the next time you feel the need to chase the audio buzz. Let's talk a little bit more about how and why though, so you can understand what I mean. The first thing you should know is that the Fosi Audio ZH3 costs $199 US. That's a pretty reasonable price for a DAC and headphone amp that also has line out and variable line out or preamp capabilities. In other words, this can be your DAC for a separate amplifier, it can be your DAC and your preamp for a power amplifier or active speakers. Or it can just be a simple single box solution as a DAC and headphone amp all in one. The second thing you should know is that Fosi Audio sent me the ZH3 for review, but they have no influence over this video. And the ZH3 is built around the AK4493 DAC chip and a set of OPA 1612 op amps. In that stock setup, the ZH3 produces sound that's good, it's fine, it's acceptable, it's what you'd expect. I'd describe its sound as pretty neutral, but definitely not clinical. Compared to one of my other favourite products in this category, the xDuoo XA02, the ZH3 is far less coloured than the XA02. The XA02 has a rich and punchy sound that I absolutely love. The ZH3 will better suit somebody that's looking for a more neutral, more transparent sound if you like, one that's less coloured. And there's no right and wrong to this. You should ultimately choose the sound you enjoy, not what somebody somewhere tells you is correct, because who knows what's correct in audio. I would probably choose the XA02 because I love the character it brings to the sound, but I wouldn't bat an eyelid if somebody said they preferred the ZH3 for its more neutral tonality. And the ZH3 is also a bit more sonically versatile than the XA02, so it's got that going for it as well, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. Before we get there, the other sonic characteristics I should tell you about with the ZH3 is that it does deliver a good sense of separation, image placement, and general soundstage size for a product at this price level. It's not exceptional, but it is very enjoyable. Basically, it's a fairly neutral, but not clinical, DAC and headphone amp with some nice extra features. And if it weren't for those features, the ZH3 might be another one of those audiophile traps. The product that looks fantastic, it's new and it's shiny, but it's not really better than anything else out there. However, the ZH3 does offer some meaningful reasons to chase the buzz. Firstly, it's one of the few, if not the only product at its price point with its features that also offers the ability to change treble and bass. And on that note, beware if you buy one of these. Mine arrived and came out of the box already with a positive 12 bass boost and a negative 10 treble cut. Thankfully, I discovered that before I listened, or I would have thought that there was something very, very wrong with the design of the ZH3. In addition to tone controls, the ZH3 also has UAC 1 mode, and that means you can use it with things like a PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, or Nintendo Switch. It also has all the normal filtering options to choose from if that's something you like to play with, although it is named in an unusual way on the ZH3. Rather than using familiar terms like linear phase fast roll-off or minimum phase slow roll-off, Fosi decided to name the filters in the ZH3 based on sound characteristics. We have names like powerful dynamic, neutral balanced, detailed extended highs. I like the idea. I think it makes filters perhaps more accessible to the average user, but there is a problem. I don't think any of the sonic descriptors particularly match the filters that they've been associated with. On top of that, filters make such a tiny difference to the sound that I think these descriptors overstate the impact that the filters are going to have. It's a little thing, and the manual does contain a table with the technical descriptors of what each of the filters is actually doing, so you can look for the one that you personally prefer if that's important to you. And so it's not really a problem, but I thought it was interesting. And while we're talking about interesting, I would have loved to hear the conversations between the Fosi Audio designers as they put together the ZH3, and specifically as they made decisions about the input and output choices for the ZH3. The front panel all makes sense. We've got a 6.3mm output and a 4.4mm balanced output, 6.3mm being unbalanced. Both sound really good, with the 6.3mm sounding a bit different from the 4.4mm, but I wouldn't describe it as a downgrade so much as just a little bit different. It's on the back panel that things get a bit more spicy. Before we get there, I should mention that this unit has the black volume knob on there with kind of the infinity symbol. The ZH3 arrived with the regular Fosi Audio orange volume knob attached, and then this one was in the box. I just liked it for a bit of a change, so I put it on there. And so with that quickly covered off, let's talk now about that back panel and why things get a bit spicier there. Here with the ZH3, we have a DAC and headphone amp, something that people might buy fairly early on in their audio journey. It's a product that can grow with you, as I'll talk about shortly, and it's worth remembering that Fosi Audio also already have a DAC in the ZD3. The ZD3 is a perfect aesthetic match for the ZH3. In other words, they've got the same general style and size of case, they stack really nicely together, and starting with something like a ZH3 and adding the ZD3 as a later addition would make total sense. Except there's a bit of a problem with that. On the back of the ZH3, the designers at Fosi Audio decided to give us a pair of XLR outputs, a pair of RCA outputs, and a pair of RCA inputs. These outputs can be set as a fixed line output if you're sending the signal down to something else that has its own volume control, like an integrated amplifier or a headphone amp. Or you can make these variable outputs, so if you're connecting it up to, say, a set of V3 monos or maybe a pair of active speakers, the ZH3 can do all the volume control for you. To do that, you set the output to auxiliary for adjustable volume or line out for fixed volume. However, there's fairly limited space on the back of the ZH3, and so by the time they added XLR outputs, RCA outputs, coaxial input for digital, optical input for digital, USB-C input for digital, and then the 12-volt triggers and the power connector, there wasn't a lot of space left for other inputs. Hence why there's only a pair of RCA inputs. In other words, if you want to use the ZH3 as a dedicated headphone amp, you can only use it with the RCA inputs. Now, to be clear, there is nothing wrong with RCA as a connection type, and the ZH3 sounds really good fed from a good quality amp into the RCA sockets. And the ZH3 is already offering way more connectivity than something like the XAO2 that I mentioned earlier. But I also know that many people in this hobby prioritize balanced connections between their devices. In other words, from their DAC to their headphone amp. And so the decision to go with only RCA inputs on the ZH3 might make it less of an option for somebody that's looking to start with a headphone amp and DAC as an all-in-one and then build around it later on. And that becomes more important still when we start talking about the DAC quality within the ZH3. Comparing the DAC that's built into the ZH3 with the Fosi Audio ZD3 dedicated DAC, the performance between the two is actually very similar. In other words, the ZH3 DAC is just fine. There's a slight difference between the sound of the ZH3 and the ZD3 as DACs, but much like with the 6.3mm and 4.4mm sockets on the front of the ZH3, the differences are just that, they're differences. Going from the ZD3 to the ZH3 internal DAC is not a downgrade, it's just a different sound. And so you might be wondering, well, what's the problem then? The ZH3 has a good sounding DAC for its price, and it does. If the ZH3 as a DAC and headphone amp performs just as well as the ZD3 feeding into the ZH3, isn't that a good thing? You can buy one box and get the same performance as you'd get with two different boxes. And yes, that is kind of a good thing, but it's also kind of not. Something that both the ZD3 and the ZH3 have in common is that you can swap the op amps within them. If you're new to the hobby, op amps in devices like this are little chips that do the heavy lifting of making the audio signal louder to drive into your other amplifiers or into your headphones. Now, as I said before, the ZD3 is a decent DAC for the price. It's solid, it's fine, it's nothing special though. But if you add a pair of aftermarket op amps like the Virtual HiFi Supersonic version 2s, the ZD3 gets pretty special. You can go even further if you want to with more premium op amps like the Burson Audio V7s or the Sparkos Labs SS3602s. And the ZH3 has exactly the same trick. You can fit most premium op amps inside the ZH3's case, except for the very tall options like staccato, or the very wide options like the Pro op amps from Sparkos Labs, the 2590s. So that's great, and it does provide opportunities to upgrade the sound of the ZH3. However, for whatever reason, and I'm guessing it comes down to the design of the circuit, the impact of the op amps in the ZH3 is a little bit different from the impact in the ZD3. To my ears and in my testing, upgrading the op amps in the ZH3 seemed to have the most impact on the headphone stage. The DAC might have improved a little bit, but not to the degree that the DAC in the ZD3 improves with the same upgraded op amps. And so to me, to get the maximum sound quality out of this kind of setup, I would want a ZH3 with upgraded op amps for the headphone performance and a ZD3 with upgraded op amps for the DAC performance. That combination would and does sound fantastic. And that's why I wonder why Fosi Audio put as much emphasis as they did into the DAC outputs for the ZH3. I think I would have preferred to see the ZH3 as a more focused headphone amp with a DAC thrown in as a bonus. As it is, it seems to be more of a DAC with a headphone amp thrown in as a bonus. And I say that because it's got the priority put on the outputs rather than prioritizing other inputs. I would have loved to see the ZH3 as a headphone amp with a DAC that you'd be then happy to bypass when you decided to upgrade your DAC to get even better sound. I should stress that none of this makes the ZH3 bad by any stretch, but I just wonder if maybe it's a missed opportunity. And let me know in the comments what you think, because maybe I'm just flat out wrong. And so we don't leave this review on a downer, because the ZH3 is actually a fantastic product, let me quickly go through and call out a few other things that are fantastic about the ZH3. I've already mentioned that the ZH3 is doing more in terms of features and connectivity than its nearest competitors such as the xDuoo XAO2 and the FiiO K7. I also think the interface on the ZH3 is excellent. It's clear, it's easy to navigate, and it's a bit different from what we're used to seeing from other brands. Opening the case to access the op amps in the ZH3 is the best approach I have seen so far. All you do is undo a couple of screws on the back. That's going to allow you to slide out the front panel a little bit, access two cables that are very easy to remove, and then you can slide out the guts of the unit. That all makes op amp rolling in the ZH3 an absolute breeze for, I think, anybody. And that's where it's going to allow the ZH3 to grow with you. Next time you feel the itch for that next level of sonic experience, you can spend $50 or $60 and upgrade the sound of the ZH3 rather than going out and spending $300 on the next tier of component. And then the final positive that I want to reiterate is just how good the ZH3 sounds straight out of the box. As I said before, it is a very enjoyable but neutral sounding device. It won't colour the sound, but it also won't suck the life out of it. And then with the right choice of op amps, you can make it sound richer, cleaner, more focused, or more lush, whatever you want it to be. So the ZH3 is an excellent device. It's just a question for me of whether it's the right device for you based on where you are now and where you're going in your long-term audio journey. Is it the product that's going to be right for you when that itch next arises? And let's be honest, we all know that it will. We all know that it's not a question of if you're going to get the urge to upgrade, but when you get the urge to upgrade. And when that urge does arise, is the ZH3's current set of features the right set of features to grow with you and the steps you're likely to take next? If the ZH3 does sound like a good fit for you, your current tastes, and where your audio journey is likely to be headed, I think it's a fantastic choice for the price. And as always, I've put links in the description down below to make it easier for you to pick one up. And then if you want to know more about how to upgrade your ZH3 or your ZD3 without spending a whole lot of extra money, I've pinned a video here at the end about what I consider to be the best value for money and bang for buck op amps that money can buy. So watch that one next. But for now, a huge thanks to YouTube channel members, also to channel Patreon members, and of course to those of you who leave super thanks on videos like this one. And until next time, happy listening, be kind to each other, and I'll see you here again soon on Passion for Sound.